All right. So today's topic of discussion will be around paleomagnetism. So can you hear me all right? And um, can you see the slides properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's start. We have already talked a little bit about paleomagnetism when we were discussing continental drift. And I gave you elaborately one example how Paleo Latitude is calculated from magnetic data, from the value of inclination. We introduced to you one particular formula or one particular equation. If you remember, that is tan I is equals to 2 tan lambda, where lambda is the latitude, magnetic latitude rather, and I is the inclination that is found. Okay, and in a particular rock. Now we will look into it in bit more details in today's class. Okay, so paleomagnetism, basically, that is what we are going to discuss. Rock magnetism we have already dealt with in details when we talked about the different minerals uh, that can be present and their nature, whether it is paramagnetic, ferromagnetic, or diamagnetic. So paleomagnetism utilizes the fossil magnetism preserved in rocks. Okay. So we talked about this point that there could be two types of magnetization present in a rock. One which is primary, that is acquired by the rock during the formation of the rock, and the secondary magnetism, which is because the rock is exposed due to the in the changing magnetic field from its formation till today. So it has also got some induced magnetization. Okay. So by fossil magnetism, we are here referring to the primary magnetism. Okay, we are actually referring to the primary magnetism. Please work. Just a moment. So that is what we are discussing. It uses the fossil magnetism and can be used to measure the movement of rocks, can be due to plate movements, or can result due to tectonic tilting. So any sort of movement in the Earth's crust can be traced through the process of the study of paleomagnetism. So requires an understanding of how rocks acquire remanent magnetization. This is what we have already discussed, and requires access to the rocks, of course. Otherwise, how would you work with them? So this is not that important. We have already talked about these points. Now, so if you look at, so there are two things that you want to measure in a rock, okay? And that is the declination and the inclination that we have already talked about. So Earth's magnetic field does not align with the Earth's rotational axis. So it is presently tilted at around 11.5 degrees. So magnetic north differs from the geographic true north, and that is what we term as declination. So if you can actually measure the declination of a of a of the primary magnetization. Okay, so you can so that will be essentially a vector, and that vector will have an angle with the true north, and that is what we will refer to as declination. Okay. Similarly, if you take a particular magnet, okay, that will be inclined. That will not exactly be horizontal everywhere in the Earth. In the equator, it will be horizontal, and in the pole, it will be vertical in both the poles, and in the rest of the places, it will actually keep on inclining itself from horizontal to vertical as it moves from equator to the pole. Okay. Similarly, the magnetization that you will measure, the primary magnetization that you will measure in a rock will also have its inclination. Okay, so that will be and depending on where that particular rock formed, the inclination will change. Okay, so at the poles, it is nearly vertical. At the equator, it is nearly horizontal. So Earth's magnetic field lines intersects the surface at an angle, and that is what we term as inclination. Can be measured with a compass. It is called positive when it points down, and it is negative when it points up. Okay. Now, in case when we have a normal magnetic field, yeah, when it is not a reverse magnetic field like now, it is normal magnetic field. If I have a positive inclination, okay, that means the magnetization, the magnetic vector, that points down, that is the positive inclination. We say that my rock is in the northern hemisphere. Okay, remember this one. If we are in the normal magnetic field, okay, if we are not in the reverse magnetic field, so if we are in the normal magnetic field, and if I have a positive inclination, that means my rock is in the northern hemisphere. Okay, and if I have a negative inclination, that means we are in the southern hemisphere, and that is when it is normally magnetized. Okay, now if there is a magnetic reversal, if the period is of magnetic reversal, the situation will exactly flip. So that means the positive will be in the southern hemisphere, and the negative will be in the northern hemisphere. So we have already talked about magnetic equator and magnetic latitude, because you know that there is an angle between the rotational axis of the geographical rotational axis of the Earth and the magnetic axis, and that is right now at 11.5 degree tilt. That is what we have, but this tilt actually changes, and we will see how much it changes in subsequent slides. So this would then be called as the magnetic equator, and this is the actual equator. Similarly, this is magnetic North Pole and this is magnetic South Pole, whereas the geographic North Pole and geographic South Pole actually is situated on the rotational axis. Okay. Now, this is the most important formula that you have to remember, or equation that you have to remember. Tan I is equals to 2 tan lambda. So I take a piece of rock. So the idea is I take a piece of rock and then I get rid of the secondary magnetization. Okay. First, I get rid of the secondary magnetization from my rock. So first step, get rid of the secondary magnetization. And I have my primary magnetization then left. In that primary magnetization, I calculate my declination and inclination. Declination is used, and we will later on use it for some other purposes. But take that inclination value. We put that inclination value into this equation. Tan I is equals to 2 tan lambda, and I will find my lambda, which is my magnetic latitude. Okay, and then we can correct it for actually geographical latitude. But in all practical purposes, you can actually use magnetic latitude to reconstruct your plates. Okay, so because in all cases you are using magnetic latitude. So here you can see this is a simple graph of tan I is equals to 2 tan lambda. Say for example, if I have a say for example, if I have a 50-degree inclination, okay, so that means the paleo latitude is 30 degree. Now here the inclination is positive. That means if it is normally magnetized, then if it is normally magnetized, that means the paleo latitude was at 30 degree north, right? 30 degree north, simply because it is normally magnetized. Okay, now let me ask one of you some questions. Let's see if you have understood it correctly. Let me pick one person and let's see. Okay, Bella, are you ready to interact with me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So suppose I take a rock, okay, and I get rid of my secondary magnetization. Okay. And then I found out that my magnetic inclination is, say, 20 degree, negative 20 degree. Okay. Inclination is negative 20 degree. So, and right now, and I'm giving you that at that time, okay, the Earth's magnetic field was reverse. Okay. What would
Okay.
be the paleo latitude? Negative 29, 20 minus, so minus 20 degree. Okay. So that means it is, the inclination is actually pointing up, right? That's what we have discussed. And it is reverse magnetic field. Okay. So the Earth's magnetic field is now reversed. Okay. It's not normal. So what would be the latitude, paleo latitude?
Oh, yes. Just wait, sir. I'm calculating.
No, you can use this graph now, which is in your, uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is reverse and it is negative.
Okay. So
Uh,
which hemisphere would it be? Northern or southern?
it would still be north, sir.
Still be not. Simply because I'm giving you that this is reverse magnetic field, right?
Yes,
Yeah. And my inclination is negative. So it is still
north.
northern hemisphere. And what would be the paleo latitude then?
Oh, okay. So for 20, it is something like 10.
10 degrees,
Yes.
right? So at that point in time when the rock formed, the rock was at 10 degree latitude in the
No.
northern hemisphere.
Yes.
Is it clear, guys? Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me ask another person.
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, what actually causes the inclination of the magnetic field?
So that's what we talked about, na? That you see what happens here. That my this magnetic field lines, these field lines are actually horizontal in the equator. Okay, they are horizontal in the equator, and they are vertical in the pole. Okay, so if you take a bar magnet, how would it orient itself? According to the field line,
Yes, sir.
right? Similarly, the magnetization, which is like equivalent to a bar magnet, right? It's a magnetic vector, right? So that will also orient itself according to the field line. So in the equator, that will be horizontal, so inclination will be 0. Okay, as we are moving up, the inclination will increase. You understand my point?
Yes, sir. So it will always try to orient itself in the 0 degree
Along the field line.
on the field lines. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So because the field lines are horizontal in the equator and they are vertical in both the poles, okay.
Yes, sir.
Hence, it actually has an inclination,
Okay,
right?
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So let me ask you then. Who has asked me the question? Was it
Sir, make Pritham.
Pritam? Okay. All right, Pritam. Tell me. So suppose I'm giving you that this is normal magnetic field. Okay, it's
Yes,
not
sir.
reverse magnetic field, and my inclination is minus 60 degree. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So what would be my paleo latitude? First, tell me whether it will be the southern hemisphere
Southern
or
hemisphere.
sorry,
So it will be in the southern hemisphere.
southern hemisphere. And what would be the paleo latitude then?
So it is minus 60 degree, right?
No, 60 degree inclination we said. Then what would be
Yeah.
the
No, yes, sir.
latitude?
Inclination is 60 degrees. So latitude will be around
You read this graph, huh?
40.
40 degree, exactly. So it was in the 40 degree south. You agree
Yes.
with me?
Yes, sir.
Everyone, is this clear till now? So let me just recap once more because this is such an important topic. That's why I am trying to make sure that you understand. Because concept is everything, you know. Let me just recap once more. So I am in Bhopal, okay? So in Bhopal, suppose I just go by the side of this of the institute. There is a small hill which has basalt. So I take out a piece of rock from there. Okay. And the rock has to be oriented. You remember? We have to have oriented samples. Okay. That piece of rock I take out. Then I measure its NRM. NRM is what? What is NRM? What is the full form of NRM?
Normal remnant magnetization.
Natural remnant magnetization. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
And then it will have two components, right? One is primary and the other one is secondary. Okay. So this is how. So suppose this is my NRM and then this has a primary component and this has a secondary component, right? So now what I do with my techniques, I get rid of this secondary component. Okay, the secondary component is gone from the rock. So what I am left with then is only my primary component. Okay, this is the component I am only left with. Now what I do, I then actually, so this is Z, that means depth. This is north, this is east. So I project this one here, this magnetization, this primary magnetization vector. So what is this? Can you tell me what is this value? This angle, the angle that I have drawn. So it is the projection of the primary magnetization with north. What is this? What is this angle then?
Angle of declination.
This is declination, exactly. And then this angle is
Inclination.
inclination. Right. Now, what type of inclination is this? Positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. And if I say that during this primary magnetization was occurred, this was a normal magnetic field. So, in which hemisphere was this? Was Bhopal when this particular rock formed?
Northern.
In the northern hemisphere. Now I give you a value of this thing was around, say around, you know, something around 35 degree. Okay, inclination is 35 degree. Say this value is 35 degrees. Okay, so I can use this equation tan I is equals to 2 tan lambda. So I substitute 35 degree here and I find out lambda to be something around 20 degree. Is it clear, everyone? So what does that mean? Suppose, you know, so Bhopal is now at what latitude? Something around 23 degree latitude or so. How do I know it is at 23 degree latitude? Do you know? Have you been around Bhopal?
The Tropic of
Tropic of Cancer passes through very close to Bhopal, isn't it? Yeah, so it's around 23 degrees. So when this rock was formed, it was at 20 degrees. So that means it had like a 3 degree. If those data that I'm giving you here are correct, they are not correct. I'm telling you now, but you know, if it is true, that means it has traveled. So suppose this is 23 degree latitude, and this is 20 degree latitude. So suppose this rock was formed maybe 2 million years ago. Okay, so the Bhopal actually traveled from 20 to 23 within these 2 million years. Is that correct? Did you understand? Yeah? Everyone tell me.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now you see one thing, of course, that whatever I am calculating here, I am only talking about latitude. And there is no mention of longitude. So your magnetic vectors, this all paleomagnetic studies cannot provide you information on longitude. Remember that. Okay? You cannot find out longitude. It is only the latitudinal drift that is what you can calculate. Okay. So now, but you know that you have read about Euler's pole, that how a continent actually moves. So if it has to move from here to this latitude to maybe this latitude, okay, how it had to move. This will not move like this, this, I mean, it can move, but I mean, in general, this is actually takes a path which is like rotation, right? So there is latitudinal shift as well as longitudinal shift. You can see that, but we are not able to account for it. We are only able to account for this latitudinal shift from my paleomagnetic studies. Okay, is that clear? You cannot determine longitude of a particular, the paleo longitude of a particular area. Okay.
yes, sir.
Now,
Sir, I have one more doubt.
yes,
So,
tell me.
like when we are examining the rock, so
Mhm.
how we are distinguishing between the primary magnetization and secondary magnetization?
Okay, so that is an excellent question. Just hold that thought. I will answer to it. How this is how this secondary magnetization is actually removed. When we talk about it, you will find your answer. Okay,
Okay, sir.
we will talk about it in a moment. Now you see one thing that so we talked about that 11.5 degrees. You remember that 11.5 degrees uh, is the difference between the magnetic north and the true north. Okay, and that essentially controls your declination value, right? You can imagine that that has a huge impact on the declination value. Now, that particular thing has no, and it will also change your inclination. Okay, it will change your inclination. Now, that do not remain constant. That 11.5 degree actually changes. Okay, so from observatory records going back few hundred years, we know that the magnetic axis continuously changes its direction. Okay, it changes its polarity as well as it changes its direction. And this is slow and somewhat regular, and this is what we call for secular variation. This is what we call as secular variation. And we need to account for this secular variation while doing this paleo latitude correction, while doing this paleo latitude calculation. Okay, we need to correct for this secular variation. Okay? So here is a graph that this will actually help you to understand. So because of that, that 11.5 degree not remaining constant, what I am observing that the declination and the inclination value, say for example for Paris and London, from here for I think for This is Paris. For Paris from 1617 to 1914, it has kind of, has like made a circle or so. It's making a circle. This is because of that rotation that is happening, and there is a change between the inclination value, which is like 74 degree to 64 degree, and that is for today's magnetic field. Okay, this is not paleomagnetism. This is today's magnetic field. Only within say 300 years we see there is a change. Similarly, we can see it for London. There is a change, and if you allow it more time, it will again suppose come back to to where it started. And it actually accounts for that circular motion of the rotational axis. Okay, so at 11.5 degree it is kind of rotating, right? So but this would, so if this is happening today, what it means that it would have also happened in the past, right? It would have also happened in the past. So suppose I have a stratigraphy of rocks, okay, and suppose this whole interval is dated as say 65 million years ago, okay, and then I have taken rocks from different parts of this same rock to have a good statistical average, okay, and then if I plot my declination and inclination in a stereo net, you know how to plot a stereo net by now, right? Or not? I have taught you plotting a stereo net. Hello? Hello, are you there? Hello?
Yes, sir, we are here.
No, do you remember how to plot a stereo net?
Sir, I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay. So I'll just give you one very simple thing, okay? So say for example, the declination is plot. So this is north, south, east, west, okay? So this is 0 degree. And then this is, this is actually how, say 10 degrees interval is plotted in this circle, okay? And then here I will, so in this outer circle I will plot declination. In this inner circle I will plot inclination. So this is 0 to 90. Okay. So suppose I get 20 degree declination. Okay. And then 30 degree inclination. So my point will be somewhere here. 10, 20, 30, somewhere here. My point will be somewhere here. Okay. So this is like a circular projection of the declination and inclination, or trend and plunge, that you can plot in a stereographic projection. This is how it is plotted. Now, if there would have not been any secular variation, what I would have got for each of these samples, the D and I values would have been exactly the same. You understand my point? If there is no secular variation, if the secular variation would have not been there, and I assume this rock was formed in the same place, okay? So the continent has not moved at this point in time when this particular rock volume was formed. Okay, maybe in 300 years. In 300 years, the rocks do not move away, right? They are, the movement is too slow to be captured by magnetism. Okay, it's very slow. So ideally, what I would have got for all each sample, my declination and inclination would have been the same. But practically, what we find that the declination and inclinations are actually, they are in the same area, but they kind of make a cloud. And why does it happen? Why they have slightly different value? And that is simply because of this secular variation. Okay, because my magnetic pole itself actually is changing. Understand my point, that this, as my magnetic pole itself is changing, it is affecting my declination and inclination value. Okay, so what I'm observing instead is a cloud of values which are which are with declination and inclination. So my job will be to plot all these samples, have the statistical average, and then kind of plot a mean. Okay, mean D and I. Okay, so that mean D and I would be the representative D and I for this setup, this rock. Could I make this clear to you? How secular variation should be corrected and how secular variation is reflected in your data? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Very good. So now we can move ahead. If for everyone, is it clear, or do you have any question?
So, sir, if there would not have been any secular variation, then we will always get the same value of declination and inclination.
Same value of declination and inclination for the same age of rock.
Yes, sir.
If
All
the
this
age is different, of course, the declination and inclination will change. And that is the fundamental for paleomagnetism, right? And continental drift.
yes.
So if I am here at 30 million years, irrespective of secular variation, I will get my D and I changed. Because my continent has moved, right?
Yes, sir.
Understand? 10 million here, I will get a separate, I will get another D and I. 30, 10. So that means the continent has moved like this, right? That is what I will get. Now, but of course, at a single age bracket, you know, where my radiometric age dating is not able to resolve the dates here. Okay, this is maybe 1 or 100, 100 or 200 years difference. There also I do find change in my declination and inclination value, and that is primarily attributed due to the secular variation. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So you correct for the secular variation. Okay. So that's what we actually told from paleomagnetic fossilized magnetic remnants records in rocks. We find that Earth's magnetic axis wobbles around the rotational axis, right? That is what the secular variation is all about. Completes the cycle in around a couple of thousand years. Averaged over several thousands of years, the Earth's magnetic field is geocentric and axial dipole. Using average inclination to calculate magnetic latitude, we found the true latitude, true Paleo latitude. Okay, that's what we just discussed. Now, of course, we talked about polarity reversal and how with polarity reversal we should actually how sensitive it is with respect to inclination and declination. We have talked about it. So the polarity reversal occurs irregular intervals in the order of millions of years. Time for reversal to take place is in the order of kilo years. It is geologically short. Rare to find rocks from transition. So you don't find rocks where you see that the such transition is happening. Okay. So current state of the field is normal. Reverse state is actually termed as R. Excursion of magnetic poles also occurs. Okay, it's not a very important point, but for paleomagnetism. But remember, what is important that the Earth's magnetic field has two things that we have talked about. One is that it is wobbling around. So two things we have talked about, that here is my Earth, here is my rotational axis, here is my magnetic axis. The magnetic axis is actually wobbling around the rotational axis. This angle is now 11.5 degrees. Now this changes also. So that happens and then of course there is north and south, and the south becomes north, north becomes south. So this is, that also happens. So this is called polarity reversal. So polarity reversal is actually corrected by understanding whether inclination is positive or negative. So in normal polarity, we already talked about how the inclination should be dealt, and in reverse polarity, how the inclination should be dealt. And the second, constraining parameter is the secular variation. That secular variation is actually attributed by taking a mean of the all the values. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So rocks retained magnetism required long ago, often they formed, called Paleomagnetism process. We already know about these things. So how do we actually do this whole process? We have already talked about, but let's take you through once more. Sample of the rocks are required, generally a short core. The core, as we have, as it is required for AMS study, similar cores are required. Penetrates through weathering. You generally try to take a fresh sample, not a very weathered rock. Okay. Very important to have three-dimensional orientation of the sample, because unless you orient your sample in the field, you will not be able to calculate the magnetic orientations, right? Because the magnetic vector, whatever you will calculate within the rock, must be placed in context, right? Because if you take your rock, if you don't take a oriented sample, what would happen? You will not be able to know what is actually the inclination and the declination of the magnetic vector, because the magnetic vector is in the rock, right? Is actually the reference frame is in the rock. So unless you know the reference frame of the rock, it's impossible to know about the actual value of the inclination and declination of this magnetic vector. Okay, so it's important to collect oriented sample. Okay, so it can be used, the sample can be oriented using a sun compass. Generally it is used, generally it is done using a clinometer compass. Have you seen a clinometer compass as if, as yet?
Not in person, sir. Only pictures of it in our last year's lab.
Which lab?
The lab that we had online for second year.
So you have not been shown, no demonstration was given on a clinometer compass.
No, sir. We only saw pictures of how it looks.
That is a trouble. These are the basic things which should have been covered in. Unfortunately, due to this online mode, things are, because you are supposed to do this online, the lab that you have taken online, that should be done in the lab, where you touch a rock, where you measure things with clinometer compass and stuff. Okay. Anyway, so you can orient your sample with a clinometer compass or a sun compass, and then you can usually 6 to 8 samples from a particular area is collected, which are separated by a few meters. Okay. Now, then the codes are actually taken. In the laboratory, short cylinders are cut out, which we call as codes, and then measured with magnetometer. And then what is done, that you actually measure the declination and inclination of the sample. We have talked about positive, so the positive inclination are generally plotted as downward is plotted with open circles, and the negative inclinations are plotted in with hollow circles. Okay, and they are generally plotted on a stereo net. Okay, now this is what we talked about, that you have a lot of, so this is one, so this is the mean direction, and this is the all the directions that is forming due to the uh, secular variation. You generally take the statistical average. Okay, and So you say that your data is good when you have like within the alpha 95 confidence ellipse. That means most of the data should be actually inscribed within your alpha 95 ellipse. Okay, and then you can calculate your mean direction. And then, of course, you use that formula, tan I is equals to 2tan lambda. Now, one thing which is left to be understood, that is, so I have got my rock samples. Okay, and what we have talked about, that I have this primary magnetization, and then I have this induced magnetization, which actually forms my total normal permanent magnetization. Okay, so I take my sample, without doing anything, I measured the D and I. Okay, so I mean, I measure it for many samples, and then I find this statistical average, and then I plot my DNI. Okay, so here is my stereo net, and just without doing anything, I am plotting my DNI here. Okay, here my DNI, D and I is plotted. Okay, so D comes by plotting it in stereo net here, and I is actually, so inclination is plotted on this. So anything that is plotted close to the center, that means it is vertical. Anything plotted at the periphery, it is horizontal. And as we are moving inside, the inclination is increasing. Okay, so I found it here. Okay, positive inclination, that means it is in the suppose it is in the, so here is positive inclination plotted, and here are my negative inclinations plotted. Okay, so here we are. Suppose this is my the first DNI value, which is of course got obtained by several samples and taking their mean. Okay, now what I do, I take this sample and then heat it up, say around 100 degrees centigrade. Okay, so what would this do? This would actually remove some of the secondary components. Okay, some part of the secondary magnetization will be removed. Okay, then I again plot the DNI. Okay, then I further heat it up another 100 degree. I plot the DNI. Okay, I keep on heating and keep on plotting my DNI. Okay, so by this, what I'm doing, I'm essentially removing my secondary magnetization slowly, induced magnetization slowly. Okay, and then after a while, I keep on heating and measuring up. I see that my declination and inclination values are doing like this. They are falling on a straight line and no more changing direction. Okay, they are no more changing direction and kind of moving towards your towards your center. Okay, it's not changing the direction anymore. Okay, so what I'm seeing, that my declination inclination initially actually flipped a lot. Okay, they were everywhere, and then after a while they are kind of at a constant, they're like plotting up in the same direction, as if the inclination is slowly decreasing, but the declination is like constant. Okay, so what it means, that I have actually removed all my, what it actually means, that from here I have removed, okay, right, from here I have removed all my secondary components. And right now in this process, what I am doing, I am actually only removing the primary. That's why, you know, the inclination is slowly going away, but the declination is there. Okay, and it is like a constant, it's like a straight line through which my values are changing. Okay. And that is where you should stop, and you know that you have got your primary magnetization. Okay. Now you can do this process. So this is called demagnetization by heating. Okay. Or thermal demagnetization. You can also do this same process and generate the same curve by, you know, subjecting this rock sample to alternate field magnetic field, alternate magnetic field. Okay. I subject it under very high value of alternate magnetic field, and I will see as I subject it to alternate magnetic field, I keep on observing that my declination and inclination value is doing this, and after a while it becomes stable. So when it becomes stable, I know I have reached my primary magnetization. Okay, and then these primary magnetizations D and I, that is what we are interested in. We are not interested in this D and I, which is coming up as a mixture of the primary and secondary. That is not what we are interested in. So this primary magnetization's I value we will use for our purpose, and we will use to calculate Paleo Latitude. Okay, is that clear? So you demagnetize, you get rid of the secondary magnetization either by heating the sample, that is called thermal demagnetization, and you heat it till you find the stable magnetic field, stable declination and inclination. And either by heating the sample, that is thermal demagnetization, or by subjecting it to alternate magnetic field, okay, strong alternate magnetic field. By that also you can remove the induced magnetization, and there also you try to find out the stable magnetic field, stable magnetization, and that is your primary magnetization. Okay, is that part clear?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Now,
Sir, one more doubt.
yes, tell me.
Sir, while we are applying the thermal demagnetization, so
Huh.
why it is only specifically removing secondary? Why it is not altering the primary? Because
Because
simply
secondary magnetization is generally weaker. That's why.
okay,
The primary magnetization is generally very strong.
okay, sir. So
So
it
it
will.
is, huh? Sorry.
So if we continue to heat it a lot, is it
Then
possible to
it will
remove?
all then all the then all the magnetization will be removed from the rock. But that's fine as long as you have got your D and I value. That's fine. You have to just measure the D and I for the stable magnetic field, right? That's all you need to have. So if it gets completely demagnetized, what is your problem? No problem. Yeah, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so we have calculated my Paleo latitude. Now there is something that is what we call apparent pole. Okay. I'll first tell you how apparent pole is calculated, and then we will talk about why it is important. Okay. Apparent pole means that suppose I have got my Paleo latitude. So if my continent would have been at that Paleo latitude, where would my magnetic pole be? Okay. If the latitude would have been there, where would the pole be? Now, you know, because we don't exactly know which longitude it is, that's why this is apparent. You understand? We talked about this just few moments before, that we know that this is where, with respect to latitude, this is where my rock was. Okay. Now we don't exactly know whether the rock was here, or the rock was here, or the rock was here or here. We don't know, right? Because we don't have the longitude information. This information we are not having, right? We only can constrain the latitude. Now suppose we say that the rock is here, okay? Rock was here. Then where would the pole be? If the rock would have been here, where would the pole be? Understand my point? If the rock would have been here, the pole would have been at a different place. If the rock would have been here, the pole would have been at a different place. So that's why it is called apparent pole, right? Now, how to calculate this one? So suppose, so drill cores from lavas formed hundreds of millions of years ago, which are now at 10° north latitude. Right now, they are at 10° north latitude, okay? So you are at the 10° north latitude and you have collected your sample. So the measured declination of the sample is 20° east of north, from means not 20° east, okay? So 20° east of north means north 20° east, okay? That is the declination. The measured inclination is 49° plus 49°. Paleo latitude is 30° north. Okay, by this you can calculate the paleo latitude is 30° north, given the Earth's magnetic field is reverse or normal. Earth's magnetic field is reverse or normal?
Normal.
Right. So the North Pole was 60° from the present position of the rock. Okay. So how do I find that? That I find by 90 minus 30. That is where my 60° is. So the paleo pole is 60° along a great circle with a declination of 20°. Okay, let me try to explain this one to you. How to find your paleo pole. So this north 10°, that is where my rock is right now. Okay, this is where my rock is right now. Okay. Now paleo latitude is, now if the rock is let me find a better way of explaining it to you. So the paleo latitude was at 30° north. Okay, paleo latitude was at 30° north. That means that was, you know, somewhere here, 30° north. So the pole will be 90° minus this paleo latitude. Okay, that is means 60°. Okay, now I can put that 60° on this latitude, on this longitude itself, but I have what I have found that has a declination of 20°, 20° northeast. So what I will do, I will actually go 10 degrees, 20 degrees. Okay, and okay, let me just, this is a very bad diagram. Let me just do it here. Okay. With the same example, okay? So this is equator, 0°. Here is 10°. and these are my longitudes. Okay. Say the longitudes are also placed at 10 degrees. Okay. So now suppose here is my rock right now. Okay. So this is the present position of the rock. Now, what is the paleolatitude of the rock? The paleolatitude is at 30 degree, 10, 20, say 30. 30, 40, 50. Actually, I should have decreased this one. Okay. Suppose this is 60 degree. Okay. So the paleolatitude is at 30 degree. So that means, I can go here. So the paleo pole will be at 60 degree, 90 minus 30. So will be here. But then what I have understood that the declination is 20 degree. So I will go, suppose this is 10 degrees interval, 10 degree, 20 degree. So I'll place my apparent pole here. Okay, rather than placing it here, I'll place it here. Okay. So the paleolatitude lambda is here, which doesn't have a connotation of the longitude, but for this paleolatitude, the apparent pole or the VGP, virtual geomagnetic pole, is situated here. How I have found that? I have moved. So this is the paleolatitude lambda is 30 degree. So pole is at 90 minus 30, that is at 60 degree. But then I have found my declination to be north 20 degree east. So I go at 60 degree along the same longitude, and from north I move 10 degrees, 20 degrees. So this is north towards east, this is towards east, right? So I go 10, 20 and I plot my value. So that will be my VGP for this rock. Is that clear?
So this pole thing I couldn't understand. 90 minus 30, why I did.
So it is like if my rock would have been there. So it is the relative position of the pole, relative position of the magnetic pole with respect to the latitude, with respect to the continent. So it's like I can say that I am standing, you are standing, let's say 200 meters towards east from me, right? So you are the pole. So you are the paleolatitude. So how the paleolatitude is expressed? With respect to the equator, right?
Yes, sir.
Then what you can say that if the paleolatitude would have been there, with respect to that paleolatitude, where the pole would have been. So it's like you are then taking a back bearing of me. Okay, you are taking a back bearing of me. So it's like you are trying to position the pole, the location of the apparent pole. Think about it, I think it will be clearer. But did you understand the process by which it is calculated?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Process I.
You understood now? Think about it, you will understand. It's like the apparent position of the pole with respect to you, with respect to the paleolatitude. Okay. So now, of course, this is okay. And then you can actually plot these poles. You can actually plot, suppose the example that I had already given, that you can plot the apparent poles, okay, and they kind of come up as different paths, okay, and they are actually called apparent polar wander path. Okay, so for example, you can see here why the apparent polar wander paths are important, that it actually can show you beautifully how two continents actually drift apart from each other. Say for example, here you can see that the journey of two continents were almost very similar through time. Okay. But here the continents up to this point perhaps were the same, but then the continents actually moved away from each other. Okay, so to understand your paleo, because you want to compare more than one continents, okay, you want to compare more than one continents, hence the polar wander paths are important. Okay, so apparent pole is plotted, and then the apparent poles are plotted with respect to time, and that is what we call as polar wander path or apparent polar wander path. And then if you have, if you plot the apparent polar wander paths of different continents, you can actually find out that when two continents were together, when two continents moved away from each other, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here is an example where you can see that these two continents started separately and then they kind of merged. Okay. All right. So that is all I wanted to talk about paleomagnetism. I hope it is clear to you. And please read Lowry's book. It is very well explained there. For tomorrow, what I want to do, I want to take a live class because we are going to start a new chapter. Okay. On next Wednesday, I will rather put a pre-recorded lecture. Okay. So please be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. so that we can interact and have a class on the elastic wave movement. Okay. And also tomorrow I will announce another assignment that you have to do in a week's time. Okay. So let's just study about paleomagnetism, and tomorrow I can also clarify any doubt that you might have, and we will start a new chapter on elastic wave propagation. Okay. Can you come tomorrow? Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we will have a pre-recorded lecture on next week. I'll stop it here then. And see you tomorrow. Thank you.